The sound of the knock on my door that day was like a sudden gust of wind cutting through the calm of a summer afternoon. It wasn't the usual kind of knock, not the polite tap-tap-tap of a neighbor asking for sugar or a delivery person with a package. This one was different, heavier, as though it carried a weight of years on its shoulders. It echoed in the empty space of my home, where silence had taken over long ago. I had been living in this house for nearly 2 decades, though it felt like a lifetime. The walls, once filled with laughter and love, now echoed only the sound of me walking from room to room, picking up the remnants of a life I hadn't yet come to terms with losing. The kids had grown up and moved out. My wife, well, she left a while ago. In a way, I had grown used to the quiet. But that knock, something inside me knew, instinctively, that it wasn't just another interruption. I stood there for a moment, wondering whether to open the door or not. I had no idea who could be on the other side. The last few years had made me withdraw from the world, and I had stopped keeping up with anything. No friends came by anymore, and the neighbors? Well, I'm sure they had their own lives to deal with. But still, the curiosity gnawed at me, and with a deep breath, I swung the door open. Standing there, on the other side of that door, was someone I never thought I'd see again. Someone I had almost convinced myself I had forgotten. It was her, Clara. But this time, it wasn't the young woman I had once known, full of life, confidence, and a smile that could melt any doubt away. The woman standing before me now looked broken. There was something different about her. Her eyes, once so bright, were now dull and full of regret. Her clothes, which used to be crisp and carefully put together, were disheveled. It was as if life had stripped away the veneer of perfection she once wore. I just stood there, speechless, my heart racing. I wanted to speak, to ask her why she was standing there, why after all these years, she thought it was okay to show up at my door. But the words wouldn't come. She spoke first. "I know I don't deserve to be here, Jacob." Her voice was barely above a whisper, as though she didn't want anyone to hear. "But I had to see you. I had to explain. There are things I need to say." I wanted to slam the door in her face. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to let her know just how much she had destroyed. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, my mind spinning. "Why now?" was all I managed to say. My voice was hoarse, raw, like I hadn't spoken to another soul in years. Clara hesitated, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't place. I've been through a lot, Jacob, more than I can explain, but I can't move forward until I face what I did to you." The words hung in the air, heavy and pregnant with the past. I wanted to slam the door and never hear her voice again, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I stepped back, silently inviting her in. She didn't say a word as she walked past me into the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the house. I closed the door behind her, suddenly unsure of what I had just invited into my life. We sat down at the kitchen table, the same one we had shared countless meals at, and for a moment, everything felt normal again, like the years apart had never happened. But then she spoke again, and everything shattered. "I made a mistake, Jacob. A huge one, and it's haunted me every single day since I left. But there's more, things you don't know, things I never had the courage to tell you before." I swallowed hard. The anger was rising inside me, but there was something else, too. Something that kept me from shouting, from pushing her away. It was curiosity. I needed to understand why she left, why she had torn apart everything we had built. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice tight with restraint. Clara sighed, her hands trembling slightly as she clasped them together on the table. "When I left, it wasn't just about him. It wasn't about finding someone else. I was running away from something much bigger. From who I had become, from the lies I had been telling myself. I thought I could escape it, but I can't. Not anymore." The silence between us stretched out, thick and uncomfortable. I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me, suffocating me. The woman I had loved, the mother of my children, was standing in front of me, broken, confessing to things I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. "I know it doesn't make sense," she continued, her voice trembling now. "But I had to leave. I had to leave you to figure it out. I was lost, Jacob, and I thought I could find myself somewhere else." "Find yourself," I repeated, almost incredulously. "At what cost, Clara? You left everything behind. Our kids, me, our home. You didn't think about any of that when you made your decision." She flinched at my words, but I wasn't finished. "What happened to the woman I married? The one who promised to stay through thick and thin? You didn't just leave me. You left our kids, our future. And for what? A chance to find yourself? Clara's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in years, I saw a glimpse of the woman I had once known. Vulnerable, scared, and uncertain. I was selfish, she whispered. I couldn't see it then. I thought I was doing what I needed, but now I realize. I was running away from the very thing I should have been fighting for. The words hit me harder than I expected, and before I knew it, I was asking the one question I hadn't even dared to think about. Why are you here, Clara? Why now? And that's when she told me something I could never have imagined. Something that changed everything. Clara looked away, as though gathering the courage to speak, and for a moment, I almost thought she wasn't going to tell me. The silence that filled the room was suffocating, making my heart beat louder in my chest, a harsh reminder of just how fragile everything had become. I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever was coming next, but I knew, deep down, I couldn't just let her walk out of my life again without answers. I needed to understand what happened, why she left, why she chose the path she did. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. Her voice was low, almost as if she didn't trust it. Jacob, the man I left you for, wasn't just someone I met at work or a random guy I became infatuated with. It was more than that. I didn't just fall in love with him. I was manipulated. I stared at her, my mind trying to process her words. Manipulated? What do you mean, manipulated? You left us for him. You left me, Clara, without any explanation, without any warning, and now you're telling me you were manipulated? Her eyes filled with tears, and she wiped them away quickly, as though ashamed. I know it sounds like an excuse, but it's the truth. At first, I thought it was just a simple affair, something that would be over once the excitement faded. But it didn't fade. He knew exactly what to say, what to do. And little by little, I felt like I was losing myself, like I was becoming someone I didn't even recognize. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I was angry, more angry than I had ever been before, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of confusion. What had she gotten herself into? Who was this person she had fallen for? And how had he managed to pull her so completely away from everything she had once loved? I leaned forward, my mind racing. Who was he, Clara? This man who manipulated you? Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me something was wrong? Clara took a deep breath, clearly struggling to keep her composure. His name is Nathan. He's a friend of a friend. At first, he seemed like he was just a good listener. I was going through a rough time, feeling disconnected from everything, from you, from our life. And he made me feel seen, Jacob. He made me feel important. He flattered me, told me things I hadn't heard in years. He convinced me that everything in our life, everything I thought I wanted, was just a trap, a lie. I sat back in my chair, shocked by her words. The betrayal was almost unbearable. So he manipulated you? He played on your insecurities and convinced you to throw everything away for him? Clara nodded, her voice barely a whisper now. At first, it was subtle. He made me feel like I wasn't enough, like the life I had with you wasn't fulfilling. He said I deserved more. He told me I could be more. And before I knew it, I started believing him. The more I pulled away from you, the more he was there. He fed on my doubts, on my fears, and he made me feel like I was finally waking up. I felt a surge of rage, mixed with disbelief. So you left me and the kids because of this manipulation? You just threw everything away for someone who made you feel special for a moment? Clara flinched at my words, but she didn't try to defend herself. Instead, she looked down, as though ashamed. It wasn't just about feeling special. It was about finding something, anything, that made me feel alive again. I thought I was doing the right thing, but now I see how wrong I was. I wasn't the woman I thought I was anymore, Jacob. I didn't know who I was. I thought I could start fresh, find something new. But all I found was emptiness. The weight of her confession hung heavily in the air. I wanted to scream, to yell at her for what she had done, but I couldn't. There was something in her eyes, something raw and vulnerable, that made me pause. It wasn't the same woman who had walked out that night all those years ago. This was someone else, someone who had been broken by her own decisions. I don't even know what to say, I muttered, my throat tight. You left, Clara. You left us. You didn't even give us a chance to fight for what we had. And now, after all this time, you're telling me this? You're telling me you were manipulated? Clara's face twisted in pain. I know. I can't undo what I've done. I wish I could, but I can't change the past, Jacob. I just need you to understand that it wasn't as simple as it seemed. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I was making the right choice. But now I see that I've ruined everything. The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating. I wanted to say something, to make her understand the depth of the pain she had caused, but the words wouldn't come. The betrayal was too deep, too raw. I couldn't reconcile the woman sitting in front of me with the one who had once been my everything. After a long pause, Clara spoke again, her voice barely audible. There's more, Jacob. There's something else I need to tell you. I looked at her, almost afraid to ask. What is it? What else could there be? She took a deep breath, her eyes welling up with tears once again. Nathan, he's not who he said he was. He wasn't just some guy I met at work. He had his own reasons for getting close to me. And the things he told me about you, about our life, they weren't true. He twisted everything. He made me believe that you were the problem, that I had to choose between you and my own happiness. The ground seemed to shift beneath me as her words sank in. This man, Nathan, wasn't just some fling. He had been playing a much deeper game, one I hadn't even seen coming. I could feel the anger building inside me once again, but there was something else too, a sick feeling in my gut. What had I missed? How had I not seen the signs? Clara continued, her voice trembling. I didn't know the full truth, Jacob. I was so lost, so confused, that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. Nathan was using me to get something I couldn't even begin to understand. My mind was reeling. I didn't know what to think, what to feel. All I knew was that the woman I had loved, the mother of my children, had been manipulated by someone I didn't even know. And now, she was sitting in my kitchen, telling me that everything I thought I knew was wrong. But even as the anger rose within me, one question burned at the back of my mind. What did Nathan want? And more importantly, what was he still doing to Clara? The room seemed to close in around me as Clara spoke, her words seeping into my brain like poison. Nathan wasn't just some man she had fallen for. He was something darker, something far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. The woman sitting across from me was a shadow of the woman I had once loved, a woman who had been manipulated, deceived, and torn apart by someone I didn't even know. But what was his true game? What had he been trying to achieve by turning Clara against everything she had once held dear? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. The anger inside me was suffocating, but I needed answers. I couldn't just sit there and listen to her vague explanations. I needed clarity. I needed to understand what had really happened. What do you mean by he had his own reasons? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and fury. What does he want, Clara? What is it that he's been trying to do all this time? Clara looked down at her hands, twisting them together nervously. I didn't know at first. At first, he just seemed like this caring, understanding man who saw me. Really saw me, when I felt invisible. He made me believe that everything wrong in my life, everything I had sacrificed, was someone else's fault. He made me think that if I just walked away from you, from our family, I'd finally be free. But I didn't realize what he was doing to me. I didn't realize how deep his manipulation went until it was too late. I leaned forward, my mind racing with questions. And now you think he's trying to tear us apart for good? What? You think he's still pulling the strings from wherever he is? You think he's still trying to destroy everything we had? Clara's eyes welled with tears, and she nodded slowly. I didn't know who he really was, Jacob. He used my insecurities, my doubts, my fears, and he twisted them into something unrecognizable. When I tried to pull away from him, when I realized that what he was doing to me wasn't right, he threatened me. My chest tightened as I processed her words. Threatened you? What do you mean, threatened you? What kind of man is he? Clara's voice was barely a whisper now. He told me that if I didn't stay with him, if I didn't stay loyal to him, he would ruin everything. He said he had dirt on me, on us. He knew things about our lives, things he could use against me. He said if I didn't keep my distance from you, if I didn't completely sever ties, he would destroy everything we had built. He would make sure I lost the kids, lost everything. I felt the blood drain from my face. The idea that someone, anyone, could use such cruel tactics to control another person was sickening. But the idea that Clara, the woman I had spent almost 2 decades with, had been living in such fear, hiding from a man who had been controlling her life from behind the scenes. It felt unreal. It was hard to wrap my head around. You're telling me that he has dirt on us? On our family? I asked, my voice shaking. What kind of dirt? What kind of things could he possibly know? Clara hesitated before answering, her eyes flickering with a mix of guilt and fear. It wasn't just about our relationship, Jacob. He dug into your past. He found things that I never even knew about. He used your weaknesses, your mistakes, against you. He found people from your past, people you hadn't spoken to in years, and used them to keep me in line. My mind raced. I didn't know what to think. I had always believed that Clara and I had a strong, honest relationship. But now, hearing her speak of Nathan's manipulation, of the things he had done behind my back, I felt like I had been living in a lie. All these years, I had trusted Clara, and now she was telling me that our entire relationship had been tainted by a man who was pulling the strings from the shadows. I don't understand, I said, my voice low. What did he want from me? From us? Why go to all this trouble to manipulate you into leaving, to break up our family? What's his endgame? Clara looked at me with wide eyes, her face pale. I didn't know at first, but I've been piecing things together. Nathan, he wasn't just trying to get me. He was after something bigger, Jacob, something far more dangerous. I think he was using me to get to you. My heart skipped a beat. Get to me? What are you talking about? I think he was trying to get close to you, Clara said quietly. I think he was trying to drive a wedge between us so that he could take something from you. I don't know exactly what, but I think he's been after your career, your business. I think he was trying to use me as a way to get to you, to destabilize you. He knew how much I meant to you, and once he figured that out, he used it against both of us. I felt a chill run down my spine. The idea that Nathan wasn't just some random affair, some brief fling, but someone with a much darker agenda was terrifying. It wasn't just about love or betrayal. This was something far more insidious. This was about power, control, and manipulation on a scale I couldn't have possibly imagined. So, he wasn't just trying to break us apart for the sake of it. I asked, the realization hitting me like a ton of bricks. He was trying to destroy everything we built, to take it all from me? Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Jacob. I had no idea what was happening. I didn't see it until it was too late. But now I see the truth. He wasn't just after me. He wanted to tear you down, to destroy everything you worked for. And I was just the pawn in his game. I sat back, my mind spinning, trying to process everything Clara had just told me. The idea that Nathan had been playing some long con, manipulating the one person I had trusted with my entire life, was almost too much to handle. But it wasn't just about the betrayal of my wife. It was about the larger picture, the realization that I had been the target of someone who had been playing me for a fool from the very beginning. But the questions kept coming. What else had he done? How deep did his influence go? And most importantly, what was his next move? I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let Nathan win. I had to find out everything. The room felt heavier now, the air thick with secrets and the weight of Clara's confessions. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as my mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle she had handed me. Nathan wasn't just a man who had seduced my wife. He was a mastermind, pulling strings, manipulating both of us from behind the scenes. But what exactly was his endgame? What had he been working toward all this time? And how deep did this web of lies go? I stood up abruptly, pacing the floor, trying to process everything she had just told me. Clara, you're telling me that Nathan has been manipulating us for years? He didn't just want you. He wanted me. He wanted everything we built together? She nodded, her eyes red from crying, her hands trembling in her lap. Yes, he knew about your company, Jacob. He knew about the deals you had been working on, the things you were planning for the future. I didn't realize it at first, but he used me to get information. He used our relationship, our family, to worm his way into your life. I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. This wasn't just about a broken marriage or a woman who left her husband for another man. This was something much more dangerous. Nathan had been playing a long game, using Clara as his pawn, feeding him information, undermining me every step of the way. The idea that someone had been using my life as a tool in some larger scheme made my blood boil. But why? I asked, my voice strained with frustration. Why would he want to destroy me like this? What does he get out of it? What's the point of all this manipulation? Clara hesitated, as if she wasn't sure how to answer. I think he wanted to ruin everything you've worked for. He saw an opportunity, Jacob. You were successful, you had a family, a reputation. And Nathan, he wanted to take it all. He wanted to destroy you professionally, emotionally. He knew that if he could get to me, break us apart, he could destabilize you. You would lose everything. The words felt like a punch in the gut. I had spent years building my career, my reputation, my family. To think that someone had been working from the shadows to tear it all down was almost impossible to comprehend. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated attack. He had been playing a game I didn't even know existed, and I was losing. I stopped pacing and turned to face Clara. So what now? Do you really think he's gone? That we're safe now? Clara shook her head, her face pale and strained. No, Jacob. I don't think he's gone. I think he's just getting started. He's never been the type to walk away once he's got what he wants. If anything, I think he's just waiting for the right moment to strike again. A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't enough for Nathan to have manipulated Clara and destroyed our family. He wasn't going to stop there. I could feel it in my bones. He wanted more. And if he wanted to finish what he had started, he was going to come after me, after everything I held dear. I needed answers. I couldn't just sit back and wait for Nathan to make his next move. I needed to find out who he was, what he wanted, and how far he was willing to go to get it. But there was one problem. Clara. As much as I wanted to trust her, as much as I needed to believe that everything she had just told me was the truth, part of me couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to the story. Clara wasn't telling me everything. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the hesitation. There was something she was still hiding from me. You're not telling me everything, Clara, I said, my voice firm but calm. I can see it in your eyes. There's more to this, and I need to know what it is. You're telling me Nathan has been manipulating me for years, but there's something you're not telling me. I need you to be completely honest with me. Everything. Clara flinched at my words, and I could see the battle inside her. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, clearly wrestling with what to say. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I think Nathan is after something even bigger than I realized, she said, her eyes wide with fear. I thought it was just about breaking us apart, but now I think he's using me to get to something else. Something I didn't understand before. My heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? What's he after? Clara's hands clenched tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. I don't know for sure, but I think he's trying to get control of your business, Jacob. He's been sabotaging your deals, pulling strings behind the scenes to undermine everything you've worked for. He has contacts, people I didn't even know he knew. And I think he's trying to take your company from you. I felt like I had just been punched in the gut again. It was one thing to think that Nathan was some manipulative liar who had torn apart my marriage, but the idea that he had been working behind the scenes to destroy my career, my livelihood, was almost too much to bear. He hadn't just attacked my heart. He had gone after the very core of who I was. Are you sure about this? I asked, my voice hoarse. Are you sure he's behind all this? Clara nodded slowly, her face pale with fear. I didn't realize it at first, but now I can see it. All the things that didn't make sense before, the missed meetings, the sudden changes in strategy, the people who suddenly started pulling away from you, it was all him. He was behind it. He's been using me to gather information, and now I think he's moving in for the kill. I stood there, feeling the weight of her words crashing down on me. This wasn't just about revenge or some petty act of betrayal. Nathan had been working methodically, quietly, to take everything I had built. He had been using Clara to destroy me from the inside out, and now he was moving in for the final blow. But there was one thing I was sure of. I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let him take everything from me without a fight. I'm not going to let him do this, I said, my voice hardening. I'm going to find him. I'm going to make sure he pays for what he's done. Clara looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and guilt. Jacob, be careful. Nathan, he's dangerous. He won't stop until he has everything he wants. You can't just confront him blindly. He's been planning this for years. I nodded, knowing she was right. I couldn't go into this blindly. I needed a plan. I needed to figure out who Nathan really was and what he was after. And most of all, I needed to protect my family, my business, my future, from someone who would stop at nothing to destroy it. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next few days felt like a blur. My mind kept replaying everything Clara had told me, every detail, every chilling word that came out of her mouth. Nathan wasn't just some man she fell for. He was a strategist, playing a dangerous game behind the scenes. What shook me the most wasn't just that he had orchestrated this entire situation, but that I had been walking blindly through it, completely unaware. My marriage, my family, my career, all of it was crumbling under the weight of a carefully planned attack. I wasn't going to sit around any longer, waiting for Nathan to make his next move. I couldn't afford to. But I also knew that this wasn't a simple confrontation. This wasn't about fighting some petty grudge. This was a war. And in wars like this, you don't just charge in without knowing the enemy. I called a meeting with my most trusted team members, people who had been with me for years, who knew me, who knew how I worked. If Nathan had been undermining my business, then they had to be the ones to help me figure out how. I knew I needed allies, and the people I had worked with for so long were the only ones I could trust right now. I couldn't afford to make mistakes. The conference room was silent as I walked in, each of them looking at me with concern. They knew something was off, but I hadn't told them anything. Not yet. Jacob, what's going on? Mark, my right-hand man, asked, his brow furrowed. You've been distant lately, and there's been something strange going on with the contracts and the deals. We've been getting pressure from all sides. I took a deep breath, knowing that this meeting would set the course for everything that came after. I need you all to listen to me, and I need you to trust me. I began, keeping my voice steady, despite the storm brewing inside me. I've been blind to something that's been happening right under our noses for months. Someone has been sabotaging us. Nathan, Clara's ex. He's been working to destroy everything we've built, and I've only just realized it. The room went dead quiet. Mark's eyes widened. Nathan? You mean Clara's, the guy she left you for? I nodded, my jaw clenched. Yes, he's not just some random affair, guys. He's been planning something much bigger than that. He's been using Clara to gather information, to feed him details about our business, our deals. He's been undermining us from the inside. They looked at each other, clearly processing the magnitude of what I had just revealed. But I could see the same realization hitting them all. They understood the seriousness of the situation. Do you think he's done? Mark asked. Or is he still in play? Because if he's behind this, then we need to move fast. We can't let him cripple us from the inside. I looked around the table, locking eyes with each of them. No, he's not done. If anything, he's just getting started. Clara said it herself. Nathan is after more than just us. He wants everything. He wants to take my company. He wants to destroy everything we've worked for, and he'll stop at nothing to get it. The team fell silent, but I could see their faces harden, their resolve solidifying. We had no choice but to fight back. This wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. It wasn't even about Clara or the betrayal. This was about survival. And survival meant going on the offensive. We spent the next few hours pulling everything apart. We reviewed all the contracts, examined the communications, and looked for any trace of Nathan's influence. It didn't take long before we found the cracks. Small inconsistencies, missed signatures, changes to terms. All of it pointed to someone pulling strings from behind the scenes. But it was worse than I could have imagined. Someone inside my company was helping him. A mole. A traitor. Someone I had trusted. The realization hit me like a wave, but there was no time to dwell on it. Who's doing this? I asked, my voice tight. Who's feeding Nathan the information? I turned to my head of operations, Allison. She was sharp, always had been, but even she looked unsettled as she flipped through the paperwork. I don't know yet, she said quietly, but I think I might have a lead. There's one name that keeps popping up in some of the documents. A supplier. A connection from a few years ago. He was a middleman for some of our bigger contracts. I froze. The supplier. My mind raced back to that time. There had been something off about him. A guy who never seemed quite right. Always too eager to please. Always asking questions about the inner workings of our business. But I had never thought much of it. I had let my guard down. That's our lead, I said firmly, my mind already spinning with the next steps. We need to find out everything about him. Now. It was late by the time we wrapped up the meeting, but we couldn't afford to stop. I felt the weight of everything pressing on me, not just for the company, but for my family. I couldn't let Nathan destroy it all. Not after everything. I was about to face him head on, but I couldn't go in blind. This mole, this supplier, was the key. If I could figure out how deep this betrayal ran, I might still have a chance to stop Nathan. As I left the office that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I couldn't tell if it was the stress or if someone, was truly following me. I tried to push it out of my mind. But as I drove home, the thought nagged at me. Nathan had been in the shadows for so long. If he was still out there, lurking, watching, I had to be ready. When I finally got home, I was too wired to sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with the possibilities. Clara's words echoed in my head, and the more I thought about them, the more I began to doubt everything. Could I trust her? Could I trust anyone? But the real question burned at the forefront of my mind. How far would Nathan go to get what he wanted? And more importantly, what was he willing to sacrifice to get it? I didn't know the answer yet, but I would soon. And I wasn't going to let him destroy everything. Not without a fight. The sun had barely risen when I arrived at the office the next morning. The team was already hard at work, pulling apart the layers of deception Nathan had set in motion. The weight of everything was starting to crush me. It wasn't just about taking down Nathan anymore. It was about salvaging the remnants of my life, my business, and the family I once had. The very foundation of everything I had worked for felt like it was crumbling beneath my feet, and all I could do was scramble to keep up. I couldn't afford to make any more mistakes. I couldn't afford to hesitate. Nathan wasn't just trying to destroy me. He was trying to destroy everything. And if he was behind the mole in my company, the one feeding him information, he had his claws sunk in deeper than I had realized. I knew I had to move fast, but I also knew that I couldn't just blindly charge forward. I needed a plan. I needed to find the mole before Nathan could finish what he started. I called Mark into my office early that morning. His face was drawn, his usually sharp features looking tired, but there was still a fire in his eyes. He was as determined as I was to stop Nathan, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. We had both been living in this suffocating reality for weeks now, and the pressure was starting to show. "We have a lead," I said, the words coming out with a sense of finality. "It's a supplier, a middleman we've worked with in the past. His name is Ryan Cole. Allison's found some discrepancies in the paperwork, things that don't add up. This is where Nathan's been getting his information from." Mark nodded, his expression turning serious. "I remember Cole. He was always too eager to help, always asking questions about our future projects. At first, I thought it was just him being overly curious, but now it makes sense. Nathan was using him to get to us. We need to get to him before Nathan does," I said, my voice hard. "I want you to start digging into Ryan's background. I want to know where he's been, who he's been in contact with, and, most importantly, where he's getting his information from." Mark gave a quick nod and stood up to leave, but I stopped him just before he walked out the door. "And Mark, I don't want this getting out. Not to anyone. We can't afford leaks. We can't trust anyone right now." His eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time in a while, I saw the same fire in his gaze that had made me trust him all these years. "I understand. I'll handle it." As Mark left to start his investigation, I sat there in my office, staring out the window, trying to piece together the bigger picture. Nathan had been working in the shadows for so long, weaving his web of lies, manipulating Clara, feeding her with just enough information to get what he wanted. It wasn't just about him getting close to her. It was about him getting close to me. The real target had always been my company, my livelihood, everything that defined me. But the more I thought about it, the more questions started to swirl in my mind. If Nathan was really after my business, what was he willing to do to get it? How far had he gone? Was he using Clara as a pawn in a larger game? Or had he promised her something more? Something that made her betray everything she once held dear? The thought made my stomach turn. I couldn't let Clara be another casualty in Nathan's war. I had to stop him, and I had to make sure he never got close enough to do any more damage. I spent the rest of the day glued to my desk, making calls, setting up meetings, trying to track down any information I could about Nathan and his operations. But the more I dug, the more I realized how little I truly knew about him. He was a ghost, a man with no clear history, no past that I could find. It was like he had intentionally erased himself from the world, only to reappear when he needed something. I was dealing with someone who had been operating in the shadows for years, someone who knew how to hide in plain sight. By late afternoon, Mark returned, his face grim. "I've got a lead on Ryan Cole," he said, sitting across from me. "But it's worse than I thought. Cole's been moving money around, making transactions that don't make sense. It looks like he's been getting paid for something, but it's not clear what. There's a trail, Jacob, and it leads straight to Nathan." I stood up, feeling a cold wave of dread wash over me. What does that mean? Are you saying Nathan's been paying him? For what? Exactly, Mark replied, his voice tight with frustration. Nathan's been pulling strings from behind the scenes, paying people off, making sure he's always a step ahead. But it gets even worse. I think Nathan's been planning something big. He's been slowly buying up smaller companies, making moves under the radar. It's all coming together. He's been positioning himself to take control of the entire market. And now it looks like he's setting up a major buyout. I felt like the floor had just been ripped out from under me. Nathan wasn't just trying to destroy me personally. He was building an empire, using my business as a stepping stone. The realization hit me like a freight train. If he succeeded, I would lose everything. Not just my company, but the legacy I had worked so hard to build. He's been trying to corner the market. I muttered, my voice barely audible. He's been playing us all this time, and now he's ready to strike. We need to act fast, Mark said urgently. If he's planning a buyout, we have to move quickly to stop it. We can't let him take control. I knew he was right. Nathan had been playing a long game, and now the stakes were higher than ever. But how could I stop him when I didn't even know the full extent of his plans? How could I fight someone who seemed to be one step ahead at every turn? The answer was simple. I couldn't do it alone. I needed Clara. I didn't know if I could trust her. Hell, I didn't even know if she deserved my trust anymore. But if there was anyone who knew Nathan better than I did, it was her. She had been in his world. She knew how he thought, how he operated. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. It rang once, then twice. I almost hung up, but then she answered. Jacob. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. What is it? I need you to meet me, I said, my voice tight. We need to talk. About Nathan. About everything. She hesitated for a moment before answering. I'm not sure I can help you anymore, Jacob. After everything I've done. Clara. I cut her off, my voice firm. I don't have time for this. If you want to stop him, if you want to make things right, then we need to work together. Now. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, but finally, she spoke. Okay, I'll meet you. But this isn't going to be easy. I ended the call, my heart racing. This was it. The final piece of the puzzle was about to fall into place. But I didn't know if I was ready for what came next. Nathan had been playing a game, and I was about to find out just how far he was willing to go to win. But one thing was for sure. I wasn't going down without a fight. Clara arrived at the office just after sunset, the faint glow of city lights casting long shadows across the parking lot. I had asked her to come alone, but part of me couldn't help but wonder whether I was walking into another trap, whether Nathan had somehow manipulated her again, pulling her strings from afar. As she stepped out of her car, her face was a mix of determination and apprehension, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a glimpse of the woman I once loved. But beneath that, there was something else, a coldness, a wariness that hadn't been there before. I met her outside the building, the tension between us palpable. There was so much I wanted to say, so much I needed to ask, but I held my tongue. I didn't have time for emotions. I needed answers. This was bigger than me, bigger than the hurt she had caused. Nathan was still out there, still plotting, and if I didn't get the truth now, I would lose everything. Jacob, Clara said softly as she approached, her eyes avoiding mine. This isn't going to be easy, but I know I have to tell you everything. Nathan, he's been planning something for a long time, something I didn't fully understand until it was too late. We walked into the building together, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the empty lobby. The place felt cold and desolate, like a shell of what it had once been. Everything about this situation felt off, like we were all just waiting for the final piece to fall into place. We sat down in the conference room, Clara taking a seat across from me, her hands nervously twisting in her lap. I didn't waste time. You said Nathan was planning something. What exactly is it? I need you to tell me everything, Clara. All of it. She nodded, but her eyes were distant, like she was reliving the past in her mind. At first, I thought he was just using me to get to you, to get into your life. But now I see it. I see how much bigger his plan really is. He's not just trying to take over your company, Jacob. He's trying to erase you from the picture entirely. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. What do you mean, erase me? Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. Nathan has been working with a network of people. He's been buying up smaller companies, getting people in positions of power who owe him favors. He's building an empire, Jacob, and you were the last obstacle standing in his way. I didn't realize how far he'd gone until I started piecing everything together. I thought it was just about revenge, about getting back at you for something that happened years ago, but this is something far more calculated. My blood ran cold as the weight of her words settled in. So he's been systematically destroying everything I've worked for, buying up companies, making strategic moves to pull me down. And he's been using you as his pawn the entire time. Clara's face twisted with guilt. Yes, but there's more. He's been setting up something bigger. He wants to take control of the entire industry. He wants to push you out, and then he plans to take over your company, to turn it into something completely different, something that serves his agenda. He's not just playing for money, Jacob. He's playing for power. He's trying to control everything. I stood up, walking to the window, trying to process everything she had just revealed. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. The reality of it hit me harder than I could have imagined. Nathan wasn't just a man who had betrayed me. He was a threat, a mastermind with a plan to take everything I had built, to destroy everything I stood for. I had been playing checkers while he had been playing chess. I can't just sit here and let him take everything, I said, my voice thick with anger. I have to stop him, but I don't know how. Clara's voice was softer now, almost regretful. I didn't know what to do, Jacob. At first, I thought maybe I could stop him, that I could get out before it went too far. But he had a hold on me, on my mind. He made me believe that I was the problem, that everything I had with you was a lie. I was so lost, so broken. I couldn't see what he was doing. I turned to face her, my eyes narrowing. So, you were his victim too. But now, you're telling me you want to help stop him? Clara looked up, her eyes filled with emotion. I know I messed up, Jacob. I know I betrayed you, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I can't keep living with this. Nathan is dangerous, and I can't let him destroy you, destroy everything you've worked for. The room was thick with the tension of the moment. I couldn't deny the rush of conflicting emotions that surged inside me. Anger, betrayal, confusion. But there was something else too. A sliver of hope. Clara had come back, not just to apologize, but to help. She was willing to fight, and maybe that was the edge I needed. But was I willing to trust her again? Could I? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. You want to help? Then we need to do this together. We need to find every piece of evidence we can. We need to take Nathan down, and we need to do it fast. Clara nodded, her face set with determination. I'll do whatever it takes. But we need to be careful, Jacob. Nathan is dangerous, and he won't stop until he's destroyed everything. I turned back to the table, running my hands through my hair, trying to think. I know he won't stop. That's why we can't afford to hesitate. We need to take the fight to him. But we can't do it alone. There was a sudden knock on the door, and I jumped, startled by the interruption. I quickly stood up, my heart racing. Was Nathan here? Had he found us already? The door creaked open, and standing in the doorway was someone I hadn't expected. It was Mark, my right-hand man, but his expression was one I'd never seen before. He was pale, sweating, and his hands were shaking. Jacob, Clara, you need to see this, he said, his voice trembling. You won't believe what I found. I exchanged a quick glance with Clara, the tension rising between us. What could Mark have found that was so urgent? My mind raced as I followed him into the hallway, the dread creeping into my bones. Whatever it was, I had a sinking feeling that it was just the beginning of something much bigger. Mark led us to his office, where his computer screen displayed a series of encrypted emails. The subject lines alone made my stomach turn. Final steps to securing the buyout. Last phase. It's all set. And one in particular that sent a chill through my entire body. Deal with the obstacle. Mark turned to us, his face pale. Nathan's not just buying up companies, Jacob. He's planning something massive. I think he's close to pulling the trigger. And we're the last thing standing in his way. Clara's face went white, and I could see the panic beginning to set in. The pieces were all coming together now, and I wasn't sure if we could stop it before it was too late. The words hung in the air like an oppressive weight. We're the last thing standing in his way. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Nathan wasn't just a man with a grudge anymore. He was a full-on corporate predator, working his way to the top with no regard for who or what he had to destroy to get there. The emails Mark had uncovered were a clear indication that Nathan had crossed a line, and now, he wasn't stopping. We had reached the precipice, and the only choice we had was to push back harder than ever. I turned to Clara, her face a mask of shock, but beneath that, I could see something else, determination. For the first time since she had walked out of my life all those years ago, I saw the woman who had once stood by me, the woman who had fought for us. "We have to end this now," I said, my voice firm. "No more games. No more running. We do this together, and we take him down." Clara nodded, her expression hardening. "What do we do next?" "We go after his network," I said, turning back to Mark, whose face was still pale but filled with purpose. "We expose him. We contact the other companies he's been buying up, alert the board members, and make sure everyone knows exactly what he's been doing behind the scenes. We cut him off at the knees before he can finalize the buyout." Mark's fingers flew over the keyboard, and soon, he had access to more of Nathan's plans. We worked through the night, making calls, drafting emails, pulling in every resource we could. Nathan had underestimated one thing: our ability to fight back. He thought he had control, but what he didn't realize was that he had underestimated the power of loyalty, of trust, of the people who would stand with me when the time came. By morning, we had gathered enough evidence to expose Nathan for what he truly was: a corporate thief, a manipulator, someone who had used his charm and deceit to tear people down and build an empire at the expense of others. We sent everything to the right people: the authorities, the media, the industry insiders. The web he had so carefully woven began to unravel, each thread pulling away from him, until all that was left was the truth. It didn't take long for the storm to break. Nathan's empire started to collapse almost immediately. The companies he had bought up pulled away, the investors withdrew their support, and his name began to lose all its power. The buyout deal was canceled, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. The emails, the financial discrepancies, the manipulations, it was all out in the open for everyone to see. The fallout was swift and unforgiving. Nathan tried to fight back, but it was too late. He had underestimated the strength of those he had tried to destroy. Within days, he disappeared from the business world, his once promising future now a distant memory. As for Clara and me, it was a strange kind of victory. We had saved everything that mattered: my business, my reputation, our future. But more than that, we had found something we thought we had lost: trust. We didn't go back to what we once were. The past couldn't be erased, and the wounds wouldn't heal overnight. But there was something new, something stronger between us. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about moving forward. Together. Over the next few months, Clara and I worked to rebuild the relationships we had lost. The kids had questions, of course, but they could see that things were different now, that we were both stronger, more united than we had ever been before. The scars from the past were still there, but they didn't define us. We had fought the battle, and we had won. We were rebuilding, not just our family, but our lives. I looked at Clara one evening as we sat in the living room, the kids laughing in the background. For the first time in years, I felt peace. We had faced the storm, and we had come out the other side. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We had reclaimed our future. As I looked out the window at the setting sun, I knew one thing for sure: sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the greatest victories. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what was to come. We had fought, we had survived, and now we were finally free.